my screen. And let's start by, that's not you guys, this is you guys. So we're still a little bit ahead of the game, which is always a good thing. Homework 20, which it was mostly on what we had done last class with respect to interest rates, is due on Wednesday. There was one small section that we did not yet get to, which is on percent increases, and that's what we're starting today. Homework 21, section 8.2, we are not doing. I am skipping the section on income tax because the methods that Mr. Blitzer uses is totally different than what we do in New York State. So it's not really that helpful to folks. So then we're going on to section 22, which is on simple interest, and that's what we're looking at today. Before we get started, questions on anything?
Yes, actually, I think it was question 11. Yes, in homework 20.
Okay, let me go there. Question 11?
Question 8,
Okay.
please.
To change the percent to a
Nope, I have the wrong one. I'm sorry. It's question 8. It's, for me, it's like 3/8%. And to give the percent as a decimal.
Okay, that's fun.
No.
Okay, when we were doing these in class, we always had a decimal. So let's take that fraction 3/8 and change it into a decimal. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's 3.75. And so this, I'm sorry, 0.375. So this is 0.375%. Then to change a percent into a decimal, you divide by 100. So that gives me 0.00375.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Only time that line of reasoning is going to be successful is when you get a repeating decimal. And if it is the case that you get a repeating decimal, they should tell you at round 2. Okay?
Thank you.
Anything else? If not, let's before we start looking at simple interest, let's pick up where we left off in percents. And what we did not look at was the percent increase and decrease. And with the percent increase or decrease, the increase or decrease is the difference between the values. And to find the percent increase or decrease, we're always going to compare it to the original value. And so what we're going to do is we're always going to say that the increase or decrease is a percent. of the original, or we're going to make a fraction. We're going to take the fraction of change, which is the increase or decrease over the original. And then we're going to express as a percent. And so what the hell does all that mean? Let me know if you're ready to start looking at a couple examples, folks. You ready?
Okay.
Let's say a $48 item is on sale for $40. What's the percent decrease? In order to do this, the first thing we have to do is find the decrease. And so is everybody all right? The decrease, the amount that the price went down by, would that be that 48 minus 40 or $8? Now we want to make a fraction of the decrease over the original. And so the decrease is $8, but what was the original price?
48.
So that's going to be the fraction 8 over 48 as a decimal. That 0.166666. To change it to a percent, it would be 16.6 repeating percent. Or if we're asked to round to the nearest tenth, it'll be 16.7%.
Can I ask you a question, Professor T?
Yeah,
Is there a way, I mean, I know you're probably just doing it the easier way, but from taking the fraction from 48, 8 over 48, can we just like divide it out
yeah.
and then put the answer into the calculator and hit the answer? Just so I can, like if it's easier for me that way.
So you're taking your calculator and you're doing, oh Lord, I'm looking for my calculator if you're wondering why I hesitated. I am positive I brought one up here this morning. I just don't know where I put it. Give me a second. It must be downstairs. So you're going to take your calculator, you're going to take 8 divided by 48.
Or what if we just reduce that and get 1 over 6, 1
Yeah,
6, and then
take 1
put it in the
divided by
calculator.
6.
Put it in the calculator and move the decimal places, the decimal 2 spots, right?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. If that's okay, that's a percent decrease. Let's look at another example. Let's say an item cost, let's say $80 10 years ago. The current price is, let's say, $95. Let's find the percent increase. So first, how much is the increase?
By $15.
So 95 minus 80 is 15. Beautiful. Now we're going to take the increase and put it over the original. And so that's 15 over, what was the earlier price?
80.
Okay.
So we're going to put it over the 80. As a decimal, I'm getting 0.1875. So it's an 18.75% increase. How's it look?
Pretty good.
Good. And that's the end of that section 8.1. From there, let's go on to section 8.3, which can I add a page? Is everybody okay?
Sure.
Interest. And I am guessing that everybody in class has had to pay interest on something at some point in time. If you have a credit card, you pay interest. If you have a student loan, you pay interest. If you have a car loan, you pay interest. Or some of you might have made interest. If you say you have a savings account, you earn interest. What is interest? How would you describe it? How would you define it?
It's like uh, the base price that gets added onto.
Okay. It's up that you add on to the cost. Good idea. I'm looking even more basic. I think of it as a fee that's paid for using somebody else's money, right?
Oh,
Right?
oh, okay.
If you borrow money, you pay interest. You pay them for the privilege of using their money. If you put money in the bank, they pay you interest because they actually use your money to loan out to other people. Usually it's expressed as a percent. This first section of the textbook only deals with the idea of simple interest. And if I'm looking at the idea of simple interest, there are some variables that the authors of the textbook and most people use with regularity. Uppercase I is the dollar amount of the interest. R is the rate. That's usually a percent. That you express as a decimal. So you always want to change your percent to a decimal. So it's important that you write it as a decimal. T stands for time, not times. I apologize. I've been reading the newspaper too much. And that's usually expressed in years. And P is the principal, which is the starting value. It can either be the money borrowed or the money invested. If you're taking a loan, the principal is the money that you borrowed. If you're putting money in an account, a savings account or something, the principal is the money that you invest. It's the starting value. And there's a formula that says I equals PRT. Is everybody familiar with the idea that if I have variables written next to each other without a symbol in between, it means that I'm multiplying? And so I look at that as saying that the dollar amount of the interest is equal to the dollar amount of the principal times the rate expressed as a decimal times the time in years.
Okay.
And we're going to add to that formula a little bit in a few minutes. But right now, let's look at some examples that just make use of that formula. Let's say we borrow $2,400 for 2 years at 7% annual interest. What's the amount of the interest? And again, I know everybody can just pull their calculator out and type stuff in and get an answer. But if all I have is an answer and nothing else, I can't give partial credit, and I'm not real sure of the source of the answer. So minimal work that I want to see is the formula I equals PRT. And then I want to see a list of what values you're using for each. So P, what's our principal here?
20.
2,400.
2,400, beautiful. What's our rate?
7%.
7%, but remember we want to write that as a decimal, 0.07. That's what we'll use. And what's our time?
2 years.
2 years.
After we identify that, we'll rewrite the formula, substituting those values in. And so in my mind, that's the math, that's the reasoning behind it. Now we're going to just type that into our calculators and see what we get.
I got 336.
Me too.
Beautiful. Should we try some more?
Sure.
Can I move the page, start a new example?
Okay.
This time, let's say we borrow $5,000 for 4 years at 4.25%. And honestly, if you look in ads for loans and in bank accounts and everything, usually it's not a whole number percent. It's not unusual to have that decimal of a percent. It doesn't say otherwise, so we'll say it's simple interest. We need to identify our principal, our rate, and our time, and then substitute. Lord, my penmanship is deteriorating. Principal is
5,000.
beautiful. Rate 4.25%. But remember, we've got to change that to a decimal. So we need the 0.0425. Always change it to a decimal. And time is
The 4 years.
beautiful. So when we substitute, we get P is 5,000, R is 0.0425, T is 4. And so what's the interest?
85.
I got something a little different, so try multiplying that out again.
Oh,
Eight
Uh.
eight,
8 what?
850.
$850?
Yeah.
That's what I got. Anybody else get that?
Yep.
yep.
Okay, next one's gonna be a little trickier, little dicier. This time, let's say we're going to invest $10,000. Everybody has an extra $10,000 to put in the bank, right?
Uh-huh.
At 5% interest for 8 months. What's the interest? And usually with interest, we're going to round to the nearest cent. Again, if we're not told otherwise, we can assume that it's simple interest. So we're going to use our I equals PRT. And we need to identify our P, our R, and our T. Help, what's P?
10,000.
What's R?
8 months.
5%.
Oh,
5%,
5%, sorry.
which is 0.05. Make sure you change it into a decimal. And now time is 8 months. But we can't use 8 because the formula is based on years. And so we need to, let's see, is 8 months more than a year or less than a year?
Less.
Less than a year. So it's going to be a fraction of a year. What fraction will it be? How
8
many-
over 12.
8 over 12. Now, if you want to, you can reduce that, but a lot of times when you reduce that, you get like a repeating decimal, and you can just type this gosh darn thing into your calculator anyways. And so I have a tendency to just leave that alone and type that into my calculator. I type 10,000 times 0.05 times 8 over 12. And again, to get that 8 over 12 inside those parentheses, what I'm typing is 8 divided by 12. When I type that 8 divided by 12 from the calculator, it actually looks like that fraction 8/12. And so when you work that out to the nearest penny, what do you get?
333.33.
$333.33. If we leave this as a fraction and we don't change it into a decimal, we are not rounding. And in general, you should not round until the final step.
Okay.
So, interesting?
Mhm.
Can I turn the page? Everybody got it? Another example, let's say we borrow $1,000 at 6.5% simple interest for 60 days. We're going to use our I equals PRT. What's T?
1,000.
1,000.
Beautiful. What's R?
0.065.
Beautiful. 0.065. Make sure you write it as a decimal. Now T is 60 days. We want to
Oh.
change that into
So-
years.
212.
So say that again.
212.
12.
No.
I don't know where you're getting the 212 from.
Because when it was 8 months, it was 8 months. Isn't 60 days 2 months?
Oh, okay. So you're using, I'm sorry, when you said 212, I thought you were saying 212, and I had no idea where it
No,
came from.
212. Like the first.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, it will. Thank you. I misheard you. I misunderstood, and I apologize. But usually with these, what we're going to do, rather than changing them into months, we're going to use a banker's year, which is 360 days. So we're going to say that 60 days is 60 over 360 years. And so unless we're told otherwise, to change days into years, we're going to just put them over 360.
Why
So
not
again-
365?
It's considered a banker's year to use 360, and
Okay.
you know the reason, you know, part of the justification that I have for that traditional use of a banker's year is because it gives you better numbers. You know, think back to ancient times when everybody did all of this computation by hand. The
All
numbers
right.
are a lot nicer. So, but it's just what's traditionally used.
Thank
We're
you.
going to take 1,000 times 0.065 times 60 divided by 360. And so to the nearest cent,
Uh, 10.83.
$10.83.
Mhm.
The months put over 12, days put over 360 unless you're told otherwise. If those are all right, next thing we're going to look at is that other formula that I referred to, and that's the future value. The future value is defined as the sum of the principal and the interest. So here, Mr. Blitzer uses the variable A, in uppercase A, to represent their future value. And we say that the future value is the principal plus the interest. And sometimes you might want to use it expressed that way. Sometimes we can think of it as the principal plus, well, the interest is the principal times the rate times the time. And I'm going to wave my magic algebra wand. Has anybody ever in an algebra class had to factor? These both have a factor of t. And so when I take that out, I'd have 1 plus RT. And this is the formula that we're more likely to use, where A is the future value, T is the principal, I is the No, I apologize. That's not an I, that's a 1, and don't have my glasses on. R is the rate as a decimal, and T is the time in years. And I wanted to write that all down before I forgot to. But I also want to look at that last box stock formula that we have and make sure that everybody's in agreement that it's equivalent
Mhm.
to the lines above it. If I look at it in this factored form, does everybody remember at some point in time learning that if you had multiplication in front of parentheses, you wanted to distribute? And you see that if I were to distribute, P times 1 is P times RT is PRT. So it is equivalent. I think this test is most likely going to be in my labs. Before you take it in my labs, I will give you a formula sheet that you will be able to use. I don't expect you to memorize the formulas. You will be given them. And this is how the
Wait.
formula is going to look on that formula sheet.
Wait, so we have another test coming up?
Backtrack. Last exam was December 11th, and the
Oh,
exam is December 16th.
okay.
Okay?
So that's what you were referring to. Okay.
Is the final exam going to be like everything we'll be doing?
It's going to be cumulative. The final exam, usually when I make a final exam, it's a pencil and paper test, and it's made up of questions off of preceding tests. And so this final exam is probably going to be in my labs, and it will be made up of questions off of tests or homeworks. Nothing will be new. Best way to prepare for it is to study from your back exams. I will give you at the end of the semester in a couple weeks a review sheet that's made up of basically all of the review sheets for all of the other tests kind of just mushed into one.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so let's look at another example. Let's say we invest $2,040 at 7.5% interest for 4 years. What's the future value? Well, how much money will we have in 4 years? And again, minimum work that I want to see when you do a problem like this is I'd like to see the formula that you use. And I'd like to see a list of the values that you substitute. And I want to see your substitution. So what's P here?
The 2040.
What's R?
0.075.
0.075, beautiful. Make sure you take that percent and write it as a decimal. And T is
4 years.
4 years, beautiful. And it's in years for us already. So substituting, I get A equals P is 2040 times parentheses 1 plus 0.075 times 4. Now, I typed that in my calculator just as it looks. With my calculator, I will type 2040 times, and I'll press the button that opens a parentheses, 1 plus 0.075 times 4, and then I'll press the button that closes the parentheses. And so when you type that in, What do you get?
8
Is that
point or 8772.
Wait, I got
I
two
heard
thousand six hundred fifty-two.
I got 8,772.
Okay, now 8,772. I want you to think about putting money in the bank for 4 years. Do you think they're actually going to give you 4 times the amount? I'm thinking you might have closed the parentheses wrong. So let's type this in together, 2040 times. I'm going to open a parentheses. I'm going to type in 1 plus 0.075 times 4. Then I'm going to close my parentheses
Oh,
and hit equals. Did you get the 2652?
yes.
Okay.
How did I get 26? I just only 20.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I got only 26. I don't know what I did wrong.
You know what you did wrong?
No.
Okay. So what I want you to do, take your calculator,
Okay.
type in 2040, then type times,
Uh-huh.
then type the parentheses button,
Yeah.
then type 1 plus, then the decimal point 0.075 times 4, then close your parentheses, and you might have to hit equals.
Oh, got it.
Got it?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks for asking. I'm glad you want to make sure you got it right. So should we try another one? Let's say this time we need $2,150 in a year. We have $2,000 right now. What rate do we need to invest in?
Hmm.
Now, there's no magic word future in this question. But does everybody see that when we're looking at what we need in a year, we're referring to the future? So that tells me I want to use my future value formula.
Okay.
And what's different with this one is we know what we need in the future. We know our future value. Our principal or our present value is the money we have now, which is 2,000. And this time we know that our time is 1 year. And it's the rate we don't know. Does that make sense to everybody?
Mhm.
So now when I substitute, A is 2,150 is equal to P is 2,000 times 1 plus R we don't know, and T is 1. Now this one, we're not going to just type in our calculator. This one, does everybody see here the need to distribute? And it gives me 2,000 times 1 is 2,000 plus 2,000 times R is 2,000 R. And now I need for you to think back to a kinder, gentler time in your mathematical career where you had to solve an equation for a variable like this. Does everybody remember when you're solving for a variable, the first thing that you want to do is get that variable term alone So we'd subtract the first 2,000 from both sides. And that gives me 150 is equal to 2,000 times R. And then does
Okay.
everybody remember that what we're trying to do is get R alone? When they're written right next to each other, they're being multiplied. And so then to undo multiplication, we'll divide both sides by 2,000. And doing that division, I get a decimal. Is everybody else also getting 0.075?
Yes.
And so if R is 0.075, can everybody see that my rate would be 7.5%? Changing it back into percent.
Yes.
And that's one type of problem you might see. Another type of problem you might see is something like, I need $6,000 in 2 years. How much should I invest now at 8% interest? Here, can everybody recognize that reference to in 2 years tells me that I'm talking about the future. So I'm going to use my future value formula. Is that $6,000 the money I have now? Or is that
No, it's A.
future? A. And we're looking for P. That's what we don't know. Our rate, 8% is 0.08 as a decimal, and our time is 2 years. Now this one, I think is going to be a little bit different than the preceding one, because when I substitute, A is 6,000, P I don't know, and in the parentheses, I would have 1 plus 0.08 times 2. And there are no letters in the parentheses. So we can simplify what's in the parentheses to get P times 1.16. And then to solve, this time we just divide by the 1.16. And I want to write it all out for a minute. Doing that division, I got P equals 5172.4133793. If I want it to express it as cents, this is my pennies place. But what has to happen you see how normal rounding rules, we would round down. But if we round it down, we wouldn't have $6,000, we'd have less. So when you solve for P, you always round up. And so we're going to say that we need $5,172.42. Because if we round it down, we wouldn't have the full $6,000. We'd be close, but we wouldn't have it. So when we're solving for the principal, we will always round up.
Okay.
And I'm looking at my clock on my computer screen. And I've got now that it's exactly 10:50. So I'm going to stop recording.